Most sustainability leads are still fighting to prove ROI. But what if carbon reporting could unlock investments, protect revenue, and differentiate you on the shelf, all in one move? Ashley Pradhan didn't just build a dashboard. She built the business case for sustainability. And in this conversation, she explains exactly how businesses are leveraging their emissions data for growth.
Costco is saying you have to measure your emissions in order to stay on the shelves. And they're actually ranking those brands against each other. We have companies that come and are able to get a return of hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments because they're able to disclose how sustainable they are and differentiate amongst competitors.
What is the biggest myth about climate tech or purpose-driven businesses that you would love to bust?
That it's purely political or that it is purely altruistic. We like to say money is green too.
If your ESG work lives in a deck or report, but nowhere else, this conversation is going to make you rethink your next move. Keep watching.
Why should brands with sustainability or an ESG focus listen to the next 25 minutes?
Brands should listen because sustainability isn't just about saving the environment. It's about doing good for your business too. InBold print helps companies reduce carbon emissions and cost. So really, we help with the bottom line because we're business owners too, and we understand that, well, money is green too.
So when we were first meeting a couple of weeks ago, you were sharing that InBold print helps with the sustainability focus, so brands that have ESG goals, but there's also this operational aspect too that brands are able to use it for. Could you talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So we get really deep into the business and that TurboTax like flow at the beginning that a company uses. You're inputting a lot of information about how your company works, and we're connecting a lot of the dots and telling the story of your company. So when we get all of that information, we're taking a lot of those inputs and we're able to find operational efficiencies or inefficiencies and highlight that for you. At the end of that process, you get a report that shows all of the hot spots within those processes, where the emissions are coming from, and different ways that you can change that, reduce your emissions. And by looking at that, you really get to see where those inefficiencies are, what suppliers might be better, different ways to work and change the way that you do business.
And that's where that cost savings aspect comes in that you were talking about.
Ideally, yes. I don't want to oversell it here. There are a lot of cost saving opportunities that surface. For example, if you turn off the lights, it's always the easiest example. If you turn off the lights for a couple hours, you reduce your energy bill and you reduce your carbon emissions. Right? I think that's the easiest one to wrap your head around. But there are alternatives that do require investment, but could give you bigger savings down the road. So both are available.
So nobody really wakes up thinking, I want to build the TurboTax of carbon management, or carbon tracking. So what's the origin story? How did this come about for you, Ashley?
Yeah, that's so true. It wasn't my lifelong dream to have anything to do with TurboTax, to be honest. But Cierra and I, my co-founder, we went to school together and we came from really different backgrounds. We knew we wanted to be entrepreneurs. We had really technical backgrounds. We went into consulting, technical consulting specifically. And we were building out data systems for a lot of Fortune 500 companies. Whether it appears to be at first or not, carbon accounting is a data problem. And I focused and specialized in supply chain logistics, and Sierra specialized in retail and CPG. So we got really comfortable with the insides of those types of companies and those industries and what their data looked like. And we got to see firsthand the problem that they were trying to put those stories together, trying to figure out how to set up for ESG reporting. And it was really complicated. Nobody went to school for carbon accounting. Nobody had heads of sustainability yet. And we saw that problem firsthand and thought, this has to be easier. They're paying consultants hundreds of thousands of dollars to put these reports together. There has to be an easier way, something simple like a TurboTax. But on the personal side, we also cared about sustainability and were trying to find more sustainable products. And we thought that was a really hard process, trying to do something simple, like buy a face wash that was sustainable, but there was no definition of what sustainable was.
Right.
And there was a lot of greenwashing. There'd be one package with a green leaf on it and one with that was all brown and say, no, this is clean or this one's green. And we were online shopping and frustrated by that. So we wanted to kind of cut through that noise, not have to look through fine print about a product to figure out if it is or isn't sustainable. So we set out to put something in bold print on the product that would
Mm.
let consumers know that it was a sustainable product. And so that's how we married that business side, the data background, with a passion for wanting more sustainable products and doing good in the world, and set out to put the carbon footprint on products.
Because you're so right, especially like as a shopper, you see the brown, the neutral tones, and the branding, and it makes you feel like you're making the right decision. But if you ask any type of follow up question, it's like, wait a minute, but what does this actually mean?
Right. And it's tempting, right? Like it does draw you in. It does make you feel good, or at least a little better. You know,
Hmm.
you're not dying to do research while you're shopping. You want a good
Because who has
product.
the time? Yeah, absolutely. And I think too, like the business standpoint, I think there's a lot of fear about, what if we say the wrong thing, or we have these great intentions. We know we're doing something, but we don't know how to talk about it. And from what I find from speaking to different businesses, a lot of times it's like we know that we're doing some really great stuff, but we don't necessarily know how to measure it to be able to talk about it effectively without falling into the trap of like an accidental greenwashing or, making a scandal. And I think what you're doing with InBold Print makes it really easy for businesses to be able to measure it and then have some data to be able to talk about. So I think that that's really amazing. So what was it that pulled you into this world? So you talked about marrying your data analytics background to the sustainability piece. You mentioned it came out of a school project. Can you talk a little bit about that?
Sierra and my relationship came out of a school project. Yes.
Okay.
We were actually frenemies at best in school, and we were just competing for a top spot in a class, basically. And a professor brought us together and said, quite frankly, get over it. I don't care. I think the two of you are better together, and I need you to work together on a project, on a competition, and bring Loyola University back a trophy. So he sent us to California and locked us in a hotel room for a week.
Oh my
And
gosh.
yeah, it was a fun one. And during that time, we had no choice but to get to know each other and work together. And we learned to respect each other. We saw each other and realized we both wanted to be entrepreneurs. And we wanted to build something together. So we did win the competition, and we knew in that moment that we were going to do something together. It was a tech conference, and it was, predominantly men. And so we had to gather votes to win this competition. And we learned very quickly that if we stood outside the men's restroom and shook hands with them on their way out of the bathroom, we could get votes because that's where all the crowds were. And it was probably the most disgusting thing I've ever done.
Wait,
But
not outside of their bathroom.
oh, yeah. And yeah, I will say we used a lot of sanitizer that day, but we won that competition by thousands of votes.
Okay, that's wild. Being in a male dominated space with someone that you're kind of forced to work with, you have to learn to see each other in something like that, I'm sure.
It's really the two of you against the world there, and that really allows you to see who the other person is and bring you together.
So when you were younger, Ashley, you mentioned that you knew that you wanted to be an entrepreneur. Do you think that there was anything about your upbringing that fostered that in you? Where did that come from?
Yeah, absolutely. I have two immigrant parents. So my work ethic was built really young, and sustainability was at the core of it. We were always figuring out how to preserve resources. My dad would shower on the opposite side of the house in the guest bathroom because he measured that the water tank was closer to that bathroom, which meant the water would heat up 10 seconds faster and therefore it would save more water.
Wow.
Yeah. So I grew up with that mindset, and I grew up around a lot of entrepreneurs. My grandpa was an entrepreneur. My dad helped with that business, and then he became a software engineer. And
Mm.
my mom was a psychologist, so I got a lot of the people side and thinking side. So I think all of that really came together and set me up to take off.
Yeah, I'm sure. And where are your parents from?
My mom is from Mexico and my dad is from Bangladesh.
Okay. Okay. So that's, I'm sure, two very different cultures coming together in one household. So I'm sure you get a lot of different perspectives and exposure to so many different things, even just on the cultural side, not to mention entrepreneurs in your family, and then just the immigrant mindset of always working hard for what you get.
Absolutely. The cultures are very different and oddly similar. They're very warm, they're very colorful, they're vibrant, and it was great to get both growing up
Hmm.
and get the best of both worlds. And also I lived in a predominantly white neighborhood in Indiana growing up and back and forth to Chicago. So I got a lot of a very multicultural experience.
I'm sure. So moving to the business side, how do you make the case to companies who don't have sustainability or ESG goals yet? Or do you?
We sure try. The general message is don't get left behind. Your
Mm.
customers care, your stakeholders care, and other parts of the world are far ahead of us. Europe is so far ahead of us. And if you don't ingrain this in your business now, it's going to cost a lot more down the road and you're going to have repercussions because of it. Forget about the impact to the world, but your supply chain needs to be protected in a certain way. You have to
Mm.
differentiate. Modern consumers are asking for different things. It is really critical for business to care about it and understand what the landscape is and move on it now.
What kind of, well, let me ask it this way. What are your smartest customers understanding about carbon management that companies should learn from?
That you can't do anything about it until you can see it.
Mm.
I think it is a lot to take in at first when you don't exactly know what carbon accounting is or what you need to care about. And I think the smartest people or smartest customers are saying, well, I don't necessarily know what the whole plan is yet, but I do understand that the first step needs to be that I need to be able to see it. I need to be able to measure it so that I understand where in the business this is coming from, what I can do about it, where my risks are, and what the advantages are. And it's using InBold print is an easy way to do that. And it's an affordable way to do that. So it's a low investment on the front end. And then you get a whole perspective, and then you can decide where to go from there.
Can you give some examples of what some of your clients are using the tool for?
Absolutely. We've got customers in multiple industries, but we primarily focus on CPG and retail. A lot of those customers are using this to measure their emissions, even specifically at the product level, and differentiate amongst other customers. So retail shelf space is really competitive. And we have several customers that want to sell their products or are selling their products at Costco. And Costco is saying you have to measure your emissions in order to stay on the shelves.
I didn't know they're doing that.
There's a lot of really great retailers doing that. Costco is one of them, and they're actually ranking those brands against each other. They understand that their customers care about that stuff too now. We have a lot of customers actually that have come with that specific ask. I need to be able to know my numbers so I can stay on the shelves and protect my revenue because Costco is their customer. And also I need to differentiate amongst the other customers, or the
Hmm.
other competitors.
Yeah, it reminds me of Allbirds. I think I was telling you before how when they first started putting the carbon footprint of each of their shoes, are stores doing something similar to this where they're ranking the product itself?
Some are, yes. Some are looking for it at the corporate level to understand the whole company, and some are looking for it at the product level. We're moving more towards the product level. That's more modern. I think when we initially started, it was primarily only at the corporate level, and
Hmm.
now we've seen some movement towards the product side.
Yeah, it's interesting how consumer behavior is changing so much. Like when you think about the concept of sustainability and carbon footprint, your everyday person was not thinking about that or talking about it when they're shopping. So it's changed so much.
So much, and it's great, right? It's such a education difference. We all are so much more informed in that way, and it's great that if we're conscious of it now more than we were before, we can probably make changes.
Yeah, 100%. What kind of ROI are your best customers seeing?
I would say The biggest return is coming from those customers that are getting their shelf space. We're talking about
Mm,
all of their revenue, right? We've also seen several customers that come to us to set themselves up for investments. There's a lot of climate focused funding out there. And so we have companies that come and are able to get a return of hundreds of thousands of dollars in investments because they're able to disclose their how sustainable they are and differentiate amongst competitors. So really that differentiation drives a big piece of the ROI. And then
mm.
finally that reduced cost.
Yeah, I see. I want to know a little bit more about the positioning for investors piece. What do you think is important for founders who are going that route? What should they know about it?
I think first and foremost, know your processes, know your product, and what you are doing that is truly sustainable. What are you doing that other people aren't doing? If you aren't embedding sustainability in the process, how can you? But for those
Mm,
companies that know that they're different, that are positioned that way, highlight that and quantify it. The most important thing you can do is quantify it and compare to your competitors. The InBold print platform allows you to measure your emissions and compare to the market, compare to competitors, and even there's a lab component that allows you to change different components of your products within the lab and see what effect that would have on your product. And I think some of those customers that were setting up for investment really got to play with that and see at scale what would this look like and present that story to investors. The storytelling is the hardest part, and we set you up for that by giving you all the right numbers, letting you play with different aspects of it, comparing to the market, comparing to your competitors, and giving you the perfect positioning to share with those investors.
So if I'm thinking back correctly, the lab that you're talking about, it's more like a virtual environment. You can see your product compared to somebody else's, and you can play around. So if I put more or less, I don't know, almond butter, can you give a good example? I don't remember the one that you showed me.
That's a good point of clarification. The lab is virtual. It is within the software. You can do different types of materials. Let's talk about your packaging. If we're talking about a jar of peanut butter, you can change the size of the packaging. You can change the material that you're using. It could be a different type of plastic. It can be a glass. It can be, you can change where that is coming from. The distance that it travels really contributes to your carbon footprint. So how much would it impact my total emissions if I were able to source it from 100 miles closer? What does that look like? You can change a lot of different elements that build the product in a different way. You can look at alternative suppliers and really just understand how
Mm,
that adds up.
yeah, I think that's an amazing aspect. We'll want to highlight that with, we'll put it on the screen so you can see what that looks like. So have you spoken to any of your customers that have had like a huge light bulb moment or maybe using the tool uncovered something that they didn't realize?
One customer found that during the process of creating their product at the warehouses, the garage doors were being left open and a lot of energy was escaping through the garages being left open because they needed to cool the product and the process to make it run.
Mm,
And as the garages were left open, all of that cooling was escaping, wasting a ton of energy and wasting a lot of money. Once they saw that that was happening from their dashboards and understood where it was coming from, they put up the dashboards in the garage, in the warehouse, to allow the workers to see how big those emissions were and how much was being wasted. And
mm,
they kind of gamified it. The more that we reduce this, the bigger your bonuses are going to be because you can see directly how much money we're saving. That money gets passed on to you guys, to the company. And by doing that, they were able to reduce the emissions drastically and the cost drastically just because they could see it and work together to change it.
And I think that's such a really cool example because it shows how your sustainability efforts go beyond your marketing and your communications. You have to get the whole team on board. And when you tie it to an incentive, I mean, not everybody's going to care about, oh, let's save the planet. We don't want to waste energy. Not everybody's going to care. But,
Right.
if you can incentivize people to become part of it and gamify it, I think that's amazing. So that's a really cool example.
I agree. Getting people to move is the hardest part. And motivating people to care is tough, but when there's dollar
Hmm.
signs it's in everybody's best interest. It's a double win, right?
Absolutely. What is the biggest myth about climate change? Excuse me. What is the biggest myth about climate tech or purpose-driven businesses that you would love to bust?
That it's purely political or that it is
Mm,
purely altruistic. I think the thing that we keep repeating over and over is that it is good for business and it is focused on the bottom line too. We like to say money is green too. And if you are able to reduce your impact, you can also reduce your cost at the same time and do good for business.
money is green too. I like that. Is there a common mistake that you see companies make when they're trying to be greener?
I think sometimes it feels like such a big undertaking that people assume they have to go straight for installing all solar panels and adding a ton of equipment or hardware and making these really big investments up front.
Mm,
And while I think those are really great initiatives, if you're at the beginning of the journey, there are smaller steps that you can take first to get momentum, to get those quick wins, and to get people bought in and create a little bit more visibility and then build the momentum from there and then grow.
yeah, that's such a great point because I think it's so common to think of it as being like sustainability and innovation. They have to be something that's huge, a massive change. But sometimes it's the really small things that make a really big difference. Have you seen anything like that with some of your clients?
Yes. So, an earlier example, we had a brand that was making skincare products. And one of the things that was contributing to impact was the waste. People were not, they were just throwing away this perfectly recyclable glass jar that the product came in. And she was really frustrated because she had a whole program where people could come and refill the product and they would get a discount or they could send it in and people just weren't doing it. And we realized that it was mostly because they didn't know that that was an option. And
Oh,
that seemed small to her because it was so clear and it was such a big part of the brand. But all she had to do was add the disposal instructions to the packaging. And she saw a pretty immediate increase in the
mm,
amount of people that were bringing it back to refill it, sending it in, or at least following the recycling instructions. So there are small things that you can change that really have an impact.
hmm. I think that's a really cool example because she didn't have to change the whole bottle. She didn't have to switch containers because that would be a pretty big investment of
Right.
time and resources, I'm sure. It was just, put a little extra label, reminder, this is refillable. Hmm.
Exactly.
So tell me about InBold print. What would wild success look like for you guys 5 years from now?
I think we've had a lot of success and exciting experiences watching these businesses make changes that impact the world. And we want to continue to see that grow. We set out to put that information on products in bold print, and we want to do more. We started with carbon, and we want to grow and add more metrics. We want to add water, we want to add waste. Carbon is just one thing that tells you the impact, but there's so much more.
Mm.
And we'd love for it to be similar to like the nutrition facts of sustainability. You have those nutrition facts on food, and we want it on products, the water, the waste, the carbon, and having a bigger picture. But we think it's important to start with something that's digestible and then grow from there.
Can you tell me about a shift that you see coming that will change how companies track and use their carbon data?
Definitely. I think we're already experiencing the shift that AI has brought into our lives and into the workforce. And I think all of the data that comes from that is going to accelerate the process. It's going to make it easier to bring some of that data. It's going to make it harder because there's a lot more data. But
Mm,
I think using those tools is going to overall make it better for us to bring all of that together and put a clearer story together, bringing it in to one place, cleaning it up, all the boring stuff that nobody wants to do, be a little bit easier, and we'll have a more accurate picture of how things run that we can track now.
hmm. What are some things that a company needs to prepare for before in a position to use a tool like InBold Print?
There's a couple things. The most important thing is getting buy-in from leadership or whoever is directing this initiative. You want to have that support so that you can get participation from anybody who you're going to need that data from.
Mm.
The thing is with the business, the data is coming from, you're putting a story together of how the entire business works. So, or at least how the whole product is being built. And that's going to require working together and getting data from different places to put that story together.
Mm.
So having a good buy-in from leadership that will support moving that forward and encouraging people to participate and send that data forward is the most important first step, I think.
Yeah, I see. Who is your ideal client? What stage are they in? What type of product do they have?
The earlier you can embed this into your process, the easier and the less expensive it will be. So the
Mm.
earlier stage you are, we work with companies that are in their first year. We have companies that are that are building their prototypes now. We also have companies like Schreiber Foods who are much further along. They're large enterprises that have thousands of suppliers. So we can support any size and stage of business, but to set yourself up best for success, you want to do it early when you have the opportunity to embed the findings into your process and make your process better, cheaper, faster.
Hmm. Instead of backtracking, saying, oh, we should have done it this way. Yeah, I see what you mean.
Yeah, or having to pay a lot more money to undo something and spend a year trying to change it.
Yeah, I mean, that's a very succinct way. I love how at every step, the way that you describe Impulse Brett, it comes back to the phrase that you said earlier, money is green too.
Exactly.
Well, Ashley, thank you so much for chatting with me today. It's been really great and insightful hearing about your experience with InBold Print and, also your story too about how you found your way into entrepreneurship and sustainability and carbon management. So it's been a real pleasure talking to you and hearing more about your expertise.
Likewise, thank you so much. It was great to talk to you today.